Patrick here from Complete Health, and you guessed it, I'm here to talk about something super important again. So for those of you who already know me in the clinic, I'm a bit of a geek and I absolutely love watching documentaries, and as a result, I ended up watching another documentary yesterday. One of the reasons I obviously love watching documentaries is it's consistently flooding my brain with new information, but I try to always stay on task with the types of documentaries that I watch and surround them around health and wellness. Reason why? It makes me a better individual when I come into the office so that I can serve you guys at a better level. But the documentary that I was watching yesterday was about the effects of Ritalin and other methamphetamine-based drugs over in the United States. And we still use stuff like Ritalin all across the globe. Now, Ritalin is used to manage the symptoms of ADHD. Now, for many of you who may not know what ADHD actually is it's a hyperactivity disorder, and doctors believe it's to do with a neuro or a hormone imbalance in the brain. Now, interestingly enough, it is diagnosed at a significantly higher level than it has ever been in the history of mankind. Now, the reality of that is that, okay, there may be two reasons for that. One, our diagnostic skills are becoming better, and so we can pick up these kinds of disorders much more quickly. But the other thing is that society is teaching us to behave in these ways. So, like I said, ADHD and ADD are both considered attention deficit disorders. But if you think about society has set us up to have an attention deficit. Next day delivery with Amazon, swiping through your newsfeed, everything comes in an instant. It's that fast-lived, fast-paced, fast-acting society. And as a result, with everything going on and everything being busy and our bosses and our corporations expecting so much from us, our brain is constantly racing at 100 miles an hour with so many tasks to do that people just don't know what tasks to concentrate on first. So the definition really of attention deficit disorder is that you cannot focus on one task because your brain keeps jumping off task and wanting to go to other things. Now, the purpose of the amphetamines that they use to treat ADHD are to allow people to try and focus on one task, even if they find it boring, which is why people with ADHD will like stuff like Ritalin, because it will start to allow them to be able to do stuff like reading books, texts, papers, etc., so that they can pass their exams. Now, ironically, these kinds of drugs are actually used as performance-enhancing drugs for students over in the States and in the UK in order to actually help them to pass their exams, because it allows them to hyper-focus during those periods of time so that they can actually ingest the information as quickly and as effectively as possible. However, with every single drug that is given to us, especially an amphetamine, which is a derivative of methamphetamine, which is what we basically will see sold on the streets, is the drug that they are prescribing to allow kids from as early as the age of 6 to be able to control their attention. Now, let me ask you the question, would you ever give your child meth at 6 years old? Now, I know that this is a street drug and it's much more concentrated and it would have a much more stimulating effect, but at the neuroreceptors in your brain, it has a very similar effect. It affects the same parts of our brain, it affects the same part of our hormone systems. And so with all of these drugs, there is a huge side effect. And increasingly, it's about 1 in 10 people are now diagnosed with ADHD. But there are much more appropriate ways that we can manage stuff like ADHD in a much more natural way, which will actually allow us to reduce the volume of symptoms and health deficits on society. Stuff like meditation, stuff like exercise, stuff like changing people's diets. If you're eating a high sugar diet and you're never exercising and you spend all day on games and Facebook, especially Facebook. Facebook, the amount of information that's coming through Facebook is unbelievable. And how quickly you can scroll through it. It is more or less setting your brain up for those dopamine hits that will change. They will change the way that nerves communicate in your brain, and it will rewire your brain, and it will start to affect the way that our attention starts to work. So there are natural ways. Don't always assume that conventional medicine has the answer. Don't get me wrong, these kinds of drugs can be super helpful in serious cases. But should we be prescribing more, or should we be looking for solutions that do not have the same levels of side effects? Patrick here from Complete Health, just giving you some food for thought. Just to let you know, Netflix, ironically, seem to be uploading some really, really good documentaries at the moment. I spoke to you guys about something called Heal last week. If you haven't actually watched this documentary, oh my God, it's for a chiropractor, it's my ideal dream. Like, to know that something like that is now on Netflix, which is a multi-million, billion-pound company, and is distributing content globally on a mass scale, to know that something that actually screams the message that I'm trying to portray to my patients is astounding. Till tomorrow, Patrick here from Complete Health, and you have a good day.